Before we get started, I need to thank the wonderful backers of my podcast, sending love and gratitude to Crystal Carroll, Terry Smith, AK Music Talks, Stephen Malio, Aunt Mary, Dale Hozek, Captain America, John Munson, the wonderful Belly, my favorite contributor on my other podcast, Holly Mack, the Betsy Hodges, Chris Bloom, Andrew Goddard, and of course, the wonderful Anna Lynn. If you want to support the podcast by kicking a few coins toward our cost, go to Set Lusting Brews Patreon and sign up for whatever level you feel comfortable supporting. Be the first to hear about upcoming episodes. Hear unedited episodes of the podcast, and of course, every patron gets a handwritten thank you note and a Set Lusting Brews sticker sent to them, which based on my handwriting may not be that great of a benefit. Now, on to the show.
When I got older and was riding my motorcycle, I found that pretty much any time that I was out on the bike, I would kind of go, riding to some of the places that maybe most people would notice or see, but maybe just not go on a regular basis. More urban exploration, if you will,
Sure.
taking photos and that sort of thing, and really highlighting those locations on my social media sites. Like I said, about 15 years ago, I was approached by a guy who was a member of a team, and he had seen my background in photography, and so he asked if I wouldn't mind going and looking at some different photos that they had taken on some of their different investigations to see if I could debunk them. And so one photo turned into two turned into five, and five turned into, about 40 photos. And that turned into an investigation. They invited me to go and experience it for myself. And pretty much after that, I was bit by the bug.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Set Lusting Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson, but we are getting off the Bruce train, though I'm sure he will come up, and we're going to go a little bit of history, a little bit of haunts, and a lot of highways. I have Miranda Young joining me today. Miranda, welcome to the podcast.
Jesse, thank you so much for having me tonight.
I am so excited visiting with you. You and I both were guests on April's travel show, and I just thought you were just charming and just wonderful. And I immediately said, "Hey, do you want to be on my podcast?" And you were nice enough to say yes. So thank you so much for joining me.
Absolutely. I am truly honored to be here. I like you, I really enjoyed being on that podcast. And when I found out that, you do a music podcast and you invited me to join, I was just so excited. So thank you so much for inviting me.
No problem. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So my name is Miranda Young, and I'm actually better known as the Ghostbiker. I travel around the country on my motorcycle to different haunted and historic locations, and I highlight them on my web series, Ghostbiker Explorations. I've been doing that. We're actually rolling into our fifth season, but I've been a paranormal investigator for just under 15 years now. And so by doing this, I've got my show that I release each year, as well as every Thursday night I do a live stream, which is a Shop Talk Live from the Ghostbiker Garage, where we talk about different people who are doing things in the paranormal and history. In those fields, we talk to different authors, different producers, different people who are actually doing things. And then also and I ended up partnering with my best friend who is with Soul Sisters Paranormal. We partnered together back in 2021 and created the business History, Highways, and Haunts, where we go to different locations and we work with historic preservation as well as set up paranormal research centers. And so currently, our office is located in the historic Scott County Jail, where we've been open for about 6 months now. And we have general daytime tours where we do paranormal and, or excuse me, where we do true crime as well as different local history there in Scott County and in Huntsville. And then in the evenings, we have a paranormal research center set up there.
Yeah, you were telling me, right? Like the jail is haunted and
It is.
it's an actual jail and you guys have set up the museum. It sounds like such a great place to visit. And then we talked a little bit about you guys are going on a road trip to Kentucky. And I told you about be sure and check out, the Buffalo Trace Distillery because they
Mhm.
do a ghost tour at night. And so they talk about all the ghost stories and stuff around all that making of bourbon.
Yes, yes. I'm actually hosting an event in September, September 10th, and that's going to be a haunted motorcycle ride with Ghostbiker Explorations, and it's going to start in, I believe we're still finalizing the route, but it's going to be going through the Bourbon Trail, and then it's going to end at the Octagon Hall Civil War Museum House. And so it will be a meet and greet there. And then also we'll end with a VIP ghost hunt of the Octagon Hall.
That just sounds so much fun. All right, so I have so many questions to ask, but we're going to start out. I always like to start at the beginning. So talk about where did you grow up and what kind of music did your family listen to?
Okay. So I grew up in the mountains of East Tennessee, Northeast Tennessee to be exact. And so being in East Tennessee, we have such a wide taste of music here, being in the essentially the country music capital of the world here. But my family actually had quite a wide and diverse taste. My mom really listened to a lot of the 60s music as well as kind of the Motown, kind of doo-wop type music. And then my dad was more the old rock as well as bluegrass and some of the real classic country, Johnny Cash and Hank Williams, those type. He was really into that, and so I really grew up with them with just a wide array of music.
Yeah, New Orleans certainly has a wonderful musical history, and I'm a
Mhm.
big fan of that. But 2 years ago, before the pandemic, I was starting a new job in February, and so at the end of January, Linda and I did a quick trip to Memphis,
Mhm.
and was amazed. We had been Nashville and we know all that, but the amount of music history in Memphis.
Yes.
Tell you what, Tennessee, it would be hard to if they are not the most musical state in the country, they're in the discussion. I mean,
Yes.
that is just, I mean, when you think about the birth of rock and roll with Memphis, the,
Mhm.
Stax Records, to say nothing of Elvis's birthplace, then
Mhm.
when you throw in Nashville and the country music and all that, Tennessee's got a lot to be proud of.
They really do. And then just being when you go onto the southeast side, you're so close to Atlanta and that whole southern rock
Yeah,
side from there, as well as the rap and stuff that comes out of the Atlanta area. It's
yeah.
really just amazing just how wide of array that music is. And I think that's why, I don't think I've ever found a genre of music that I didn't like.
Yeah.
And it's I mean, pretty much all day, every day, I've got some type of music going. And when we talk about like some of our, favorite bucket list locations and that sort of thing, people will always ask, where do you want, if you could visit any type of haunted location and highlight that on your show, where would you like to go? And You mentioned Memphis, and for me, the Mississippi Blues Trail would have to be probably one of my bucket list locations to just ride, highlight, and talk about some of the haunted locations, as well as be able to incorporate that music starting there in Memphis and heading on down to New Orleans.
Miranda, how did you become in love with using your motorcycle and that mode of transportation? And then how did you get the bug of this, paranormal, haunted, this whole, passion of yours on there? How did both of those happen?
So it was really just kind of a natural fit to be able to combine these two passions. I've always loved motorcycles and always wanted to ride. I didn't start riding until I was a little bit older, until I was 29 was when I got my first motorcycle and started riding, and I've pretty much been on it ever since. My family, they weren't motorcycle riders, and they were a little bit unsure whenever I had said I wanted to finally do it, because I wanted to ride forever. And I went out, I took the safety course, and so got my license, and then was pretty much on the back anytime and every time I had the opportunity. As far as the paranormal, I've always been interested in that as well. I grew up down at my grandmother lived next door to me, and so she grew up in the Appalachian Mountains, and she was constantly sharing stories about mountain haints and old folklore, and really just kind of sharing stories about the history and, I guess, ghosts of the past. And so I spent a lot of time, pretty much about every evening. I was down there listening to these stories and taking them in, and then my dad as well. My dad would take me pretty much every weekend. We would end up going back roads riding in his car, and he would tell me different stories about how the towns used to be, because we've got some areas here in East Tennessee that, I mean, pretty much now there's not much there other than a house or two, but back in the early 1900s they were boom towns because of the coal and the timber booms. And so essentially he was sharing those stories about the ghosts of the past. And so I really grew up hearing all of that and really just falling in love with it. And so when I got older and was riding my motorcycle, I found that pretty much any time that I was out on the bike, I would kind of go, riding to some of the places that maybe most people would notice or see, but maybe just not go on a regular basis. Really just kind of more maybe more urban exploration, if you will,
Sure.
taking photos and that sort of thing, and really highlighting those locations on my social media sites. Like I said, about 15 years ago, I was approached by a guy who was a member of a team, and he had seen my background in photography, and so he asked if I wouldn't mind going and looking at some different photos that they had taken on some of their different investigations to see if I could debunk them. And so one photo turned into two, two turned into five, and five turned into, about 40 photos. And that turned into an investigation. They invited me to go and experience it for myself. And pretty much after that, I was bit by the bug. And so I went on a couple more investigations. I was invited to join the team, and really got into the paranormal that way, by doing their photo analysis as well as producing their videos, and then also just investigating. And so as I'd mentioned a few minutes ago, when I was not investigating with the team, I was always out on my motorcycle doing urban exploration. And so this went on for probably about 10 years, and I found that I was actually going out a whole lot more on my own, and I got to thinking, why not combine these two passions?
Hmm.
Since I'm going out and doing it anyways, why not combine the passions and document it through video?
Yeah.
And so I really kind of stepped back, and my background is in photography and marketing, and so I thought, rather than just going to a location and putting it out there, why don't I actually put a brand together
Hmm.
and, release these episodes more of a season and film it in a sort of way that puts the audience into the location with me rather than just kind of saying, here's the location, here's the evidence I captured. Why don't you come along with me? Kind of more vlog style. And so I sat down and I really put a lot of thought into it. And that's when I ended up coming up with Ghostbiker Explorations. And it actually took off really quick. After the first season, we were rolling right into the second. And I mean, it was just nonstop at that point. And, I had locations contacting me, wanting me to investigate their locations and do videos there. Harley Davidson reached out wanting to do different events, because it was just a unique enough niche to where it was like, every town has that story, and
Yeah.
it's not necessarily about the location, but the destination to get there. And
Hmm.
so really being able to combine the travel, combine the history as well as the paranormal, it really just fit really well and created a really unique opportunity.
It's just kind of fun. It's very cool that, something that you're passionate about, you've been able to, make it a paying gig. And that's just,
Mhm.
I admire that so much because it is hard to do.
Mhm.
And so good job.
Well, thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would have never, I'd have never thought in the beginning, that something that was a hobby, or two hobbies that I really enjoyed with the paranormal as well as
Yeah.
the motorcycling, that I would be able to turn it into that. And
Hmm.
I do believe that if it were not for starting Ghost Biker, I know I wouldn't have met my business partner and we wouldn't have, had that opportunity, all these opportunities. It's been really cool to see them all work together to grow into what it is today. And so I left the corporate environment in 2020 and have been able to do this full time and be able to do, historic preservation as well as, setting up the paranormal research center and being able to do experiments and stuff that, you know, other investigators are able to participate in to, you know, do things that we've not seen other locations do has been just, like I said, a dream come true. And, I would have, if you had asked me that 5 years ago, I would have thought, I don't know. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it really is a cool thing.
Do you, where do you think you're going to go next?
Our goal with History Highways and Haunts is to be able to really help these locations, these towns and these locations that may have a building that's sitting there that doesn't have a use, or that's been closed for quite some time, to really show them how they can do what we've done, to
Yeah.
help with marketing, to help with setting up either a museum or a paranormal research center. That's kind of the goal, because we've actually grown quite rapidly since we've been open at the jail since September. This has gone places that we didn't think it would go as quick as it's going. And, kind of the story behind the jail is the fact, it was in operation from 1904 and until 2008.
Yeah.
And when it closed in 2008, it sat vacant up until we ended up taking it over in 2021. The town had gotten a tourism grant in 2017 to go in, kind of freshen it up, put the windows in, put a heating and air system in it. But
Hmm.
they still didn't know what they were going to do with it. And so in talking to the mayor today, he'll tell you that, he knew he wanted to do something special with it, but he really didn't quite know what. And so whenever my business partner and I approached the town and told him, he said he instantly knew at that point. He said he could see it through our passion, but also the vision was just very clear, that of what we were wanting to do. And so, I think that that's kind of the situation in a lot of these places. You have these hidden gems that are just, just sitting there. Maybe, we were able to take the burden off of the taxpayers because they were paying the taxes on this building that was just sitting there. and take that and be able to, turn it into revenue for the town, as well as taking that burden off. So I think that by showing that to the community, it kind of puts something out there that maybe they hadn't thought of. So the goal is to go and to maybe get a couple more of those buildings under our belt in the future, and really be able to help with the preservation, and help, the towns bring in those tourism dollars.
Well, I'm going to get to music, I promise listeners, but I'm fascinated by this story. So, Miranda, what is the question or statement you get that makes you roll your eyes? Because, like, for me, as someone who does a Bruce Springsteen podcast,
Mhm.
I get a lot of that guy. What does he still even make music anymore? Or you can't understand anything he says. So what are a couple of statements that you just kind of roll your eyes and go, well, okay, whatever?
That's a very good question. We find a lot in doing what we do that there's a misconception about the paranormal. A
Okay.
lot of times people think that when you go into these buildings that there's a darker side to things.
Yeah.
That you're messing with something you shouldn't. The people that we're working with, and from what we've been doing over the last little bit, between myself and my business partner, we've got over 25 years of experience in this. My business partner, she is a doctor. Her background is in criminal justice, and so we're a lot of times when people look at that, they just don't understand what the paranormal is. So it's been sort of a re-education of how it's paranormal research and what we're doing, like the steps and stuff, because usually when you say you do that, they'll look at you like you got three heads. And
Yeah.
so that's probably the one thing. I mean, the main thing is that people, think you're coming in and you're conjuring, you're messing with the demonic. Not all these entities are demonic. It's really quite rare. So that's probably the biggest question, is really just what we're doing.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, if they're not in it, they don't always understand. And TV has not really done the best. They've kind of done a disservice to the paranormal community in showing certain things with ghost hunters, ghost adventures.
Yeah.
So we're trying to really kind of change that stigma that some of the paranormal has, especially here in the more southern Bible Belt
Yeah.
areas.
Yeah, absolutely. I can imagine that. That's honest. That's so cool. I just appreciate it. And I love the idea that you've just kind of wrapped up, your passions and 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 are doing positive things about it. That um the the history is there, whether you
Mhm.
embrace the paranormal or not. The history is there and it just goes away, right? If you
Yeah.
don't take care of it. And I know that when Lynn and I visit, we'll go, sightseeing,
Mhm.
and museums and other places we just adore,
Mhm.
to hear that history. And I, she did roll her eyes at me when we're at Frankfort, Kentucky. There is my old Kentucky home,
Mhm.
which is he never lived there, but he would visit there, and that was the house he talked about, Stephen Foster, when he wrote that song. And so it's there. The people giving the tour are in period costumes, and as you go through, there's multiple drawings of people that were in their casket, right? That was
Mhm.
something they did back then. And
Mhm.
I looked at my wife like, this is a supernatural episode just waiting to happen.
Right.
And she just looked at me and hit me, right? Like, I'm like, I'm just saying, Dean and Sam are coming over.
That's right.
Which probably is not very good. It's definitely fiction, right? It's just so, yeah, it does not put you guys necessarily in the best thing. But I just love that history and the idea that you've been able to throw that in, and throwing it also with, we talked about on the podcast, Easy Rider was one of the,
Mhm.
a something. So
Mhm.
the idea of hitting the road, the wind in your face, and just music. So let's move into, um, as you're growing up, you're hitting your teenage years, did you did you rebel against your parents' music? Did you just keep that and find, add stuff to yourself? What talk about your musical journey, Miranda?
Sure, sure. So, I don't think I ever actually rebelled against it. My brother was 3 years older than me. And so, he played a huge role in the music that I really enjoyed. I think my first album I ever got was Elvis Presley's Greatest Hits, and that was when I was 5 years old. My parents were teachers, and so in the summertime, we would load up into the family van and we would take off across the country. And we would usually be on the road for a week or 2 weeks going to different places. And they always had us stop at the different spots,
Hmm.
along the trip. We were always stopping about 4 or 5 places each day. And so Elvis Presley's house was one of them that we stopped at on the way to the Grand Canyon. And so I just really fell in love with, watching his style. And then very quickly after that, I really kind of started copying a lot of my brother's tastes. I was born in 1980, so that would have been in 1985. And, that was kind of at the height between 85 and 87 was kind of the height of, the Sunset Strip hair metal band
Right.
music. And so I absolutely fell in love with Def Leppard and Guns N' Roses, Skid Row, the power ballads. And while Elvis Presley was my first cassette, I became obsessed with Def Leppard. And
Okay.
so I got Hysteria there in 87 and was wore that cassette out. And then quickly at that point I went back and purchased all of their older stuff. And so really followed the hair metal genre up until it really kind of started to fade away when grunge came in.
Yeah.
And but I still went back to that 70s, 80s, the hair metal, blues. Those would have to be my all-time favorite genres of music that I still, even today, whenever I'm in my car, that's usually what I go for.
Miranda, you have hit across a common theme on this podcast. Siblings.
Yes.
Siblings play an important part in this. It's very rare. I have an only child on the podcast. And so you're either the older sibling, and therefore you are the one influencing your younger siblings, or you're a younger sibling and they influenced you either on the positive side where you loved their music, or sometimes the younger sibling rebels and like would go through a totally different kind of music, like, oh no, hip hop was my older brother's music, so I got into grunge. Or
Uh-huh.
he loved classic rock, so I had to, I went out, and I found the blues. So yeah, that you are, it is a story often told. So I think that I often think of that movie, Almost Famous, where
Hmm.
his sister leaves him the albums, and
Yes.
I just think that is truly um, an iconic moment for all of us who have brothers and sisters and
Mhm.
siblings. That's great. So
Yeah, and
yeah,
some of my best memories were sitting there with him, with the radio going, because you would have that one song that you would hear, and then of course the DJs would have it on spin, every so often they'd play it, 3 or 4 times a day,
yeah,
and just sitting there listening to the radio with him with your finger on the record button to be able to record that song, and then you get mad when the
absolutely.
DJ would speak. So.
Yes, absolutely. Did So let's talk live shows. Did you get to
Mhm.
hear some of your Def Leppard and other bands? Did you get to see some of them live, Miranda?
I did. I did. I've actually, at this point, I've seen Def Leppard live 13 times.
All right.
And yeah, the last time I finally actually got to meet them, and I
Oh,
haven't gone and bought.
Tell me
Yeah,
that
which
story.
to
You got to tell me
oh,
that story.
I think I cried a little bit.
Okay.
I think I'm lucky that I was actually able to speak. That's something I'd been wanting to do for a long time because I didn't get to see them during their heyday because I was so young at that time. But when I did finally get to see them live, I mean, it was truly a dream come true, and it was a concert with Def Leppard, Poison, and Tesla,
Hmm.
and so no, I'm sorry, it was Def Leppard, Poison, and Journey. And
Okay.
so I was really excited about that because those were 3 of my idols growing up that I really enjoyed listening to. And so, of course, Steve Perry was not touring with, Journey at the time. That was after
Yeah.
he had left. But, I mean, if you closed your eyes, the guy that was singing for him, I mean, he just sounded just like him.
Yeah.
And so when I finally got to see him, it was just truly a dream, and it really took me back to the days, when they would fill the arenas and you would see them on MTV, and
Yeah.
just dream of, being that big-haired girl there in the audience. And so, and I think we even actually, we teased our hair up for that concert.
Oh, how
But
fun.
we had a total blast with it. But then like I said, I saw him 12 more times, and I'd been kicking around meeting them, and the tickets were just really expensive to get to do the meet and greet experience.
Hmm.
But it's one of those things with them, they always make it worth your while. I mean, they always have a great swag bag, and
Sure.
and it's a whole experience in and of itself. And so, I actually drove down to Birmingham, Alabama, with my good friend Tina Thurman, and so we made a weekend of it, and we went down there, got to meet them, and so I remember being shuffled into the line. So we got to take pictures on the stage. We also got to go in, and I remember standing there, and they told us they're like they're behind this curtain, and they had them kind of lined up, and you really didn't get a lot of opportunity to talk to them, but they're like, okay, whenever you go around, you can shake their hand, speak to them. We're going to take a picture. We're going to take like 5 pictures. And if any of them aren't looking or they're blinking or whatever when we're taking the picture, then you won't get a copy of that picture. And so I think we ended up getting 3 pictures with them. And I just remember walking around the corner, and I don't think I could hardly speak. Um, it was just, it's just like looking my dream, in the face. And so, I was just completely on cloud nine. We were in the second row at that point,
Yeah.
and got to see on that particular concert. It was also Journey as well as Def Leppard. It was kind of like seeing them that last time was almost kind of like seeing them for that first time because
Yeah.
they had Journey with them
Full
as well.
circle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and, I've just in my mind, I've not been able to buy tickets, to them again because I thought, "Man, there's nothing that can duplicate that experience that I had of actually finally getting to
Hmm.
meet them," and I was able to get, an autograph picture with all of them, and, which is actually hanging right in here behind me, and
Yeah.
so, that was probably one of the best concert experiences I've ever had,
Did
hands down.
you did you say anything at all to them?
Honestly, I can't hardly remember what I said.
Okay.
Because
So,
when I was gonna
yeah.
talk to him, I don't think I could feel like I could get my mouth to work. It was like it felt like I was in there, and then I remember saying to my friend Tina, I was like, "Okay, so that really just happened?" And she's like, "Yeah." And because ended up going in there together, and, I honestly don't remember what I said. That's pretty bad.
So, listeners, jump ahead 3 minutes because you've heard this story way too many times. Um, so Bruce did his autobiography several years ago, like 2014. And they said was an excellent author. Like he was everything a publishing house wanted. And so he did book tours.
Mhm,
And so he went to Austin, which is, I'm in Dallas, so, a couple hours down. And I had just started a brand new job, Miranda. I
mhm.
mean, barely had been at this job, um, like not even 3 weeks. And Bruce is going to be in Austin on December 1st. And I'm like, how do I ask for my boss to be off? So I, I bought the ticket thinking it was only $25, and that got you a signed copy of the book and the meet and greet.
Mm-hmm.
So I figured, well, if I don't go, it's only $25, okay. So we had tons of opening recs. I mean, just I run a call center, and
Mm-hmm.
we just had so many openings. So we weren't going out of town for Thanksgiving. So I reached out to everyone who had applied, and I said, hey, no big deal. I know it's the holiday weekend, but if you don't have anything to do, come up to the office on Friday after Thanksgiving, and I'll interview you, right?
Mm-hmm.
To get a jump ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, and if you've got holiday plans, don't worry about it. We'll talk next week. So 7 or 8 people said yes, and I interviewed. And so on Monday, I'm meeting with my new boss, Joel, and he said, how'd it go? I said, oh, pretty good. I said, I ended up interviewing about 7 or 8 people on Friday. And he said, you spent all day Friday interviewing? I said, yeah, we really needed. Well, man, if you need a day off or something, let me know. Well, Joel, let me tell you. And so he laughed. He goes, oh, yeah, you've got to go. So I get in my car, December 1st in the morning, and I drive to Austin. And unlike you, I, if you've ever watched The Godfather at the very beginning, where Luca Brasi keeps practicing what he's going to tell the Don,
Yes.
may it be a masculine child, maybe, and that's me. The whole way down, I'm not listening to music. I'm not listening to Bruce. I'm not listening to a podcast. I am just over and over again. What am I going to say? 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 So I'm in line. It's multiple hours. The line is incredibly long. It's around the building, and all you get is maybe 7 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
You walk there. They take the photo with your phone, so they don't even have a professional photographer. They've got your phone, and Bruce shakes your hand, and you don't even get a book. You get it, and then after you see him, they hand you a copy of the book that he had pre-signed.
Okay.
So I said, Bruce, I spent the last year, I spent 9 months unemployed, and I listened to Better Days and Land of Hope and Dreams every day, and that's what gave me hope. Thank you for that. I think he might have heard 2 words of that, because next, they're moving on. But I have said this before, and my listeners are probably back now, but I've said I needed to say it more than I needed him to hear it. So I got 2 pictures. I got one of them of Bruce and I both staring out at the camera, and it's a good photo. And the other photo is me facing him, and I'm talking, and my unkind friends say I look like I'm telling Bruce to do something dirty to me. So yes. So so that's the only time I've met him. It counts. I've got a photo.
That's right.
I photocopied the book, the page where he signed. I made a really high quality photo or picture of it.
Mm-hmm.
Had it printed, and I have the 2 pictures of me on either side of the sign, and I had it framed. And so that was my memory.
Oh, that's awesome. And
Yeah.
that's one of the things. And I was having a conversation with a friend just recently about this
Yeah.
because after COVID hit and kind of things were going on
Yeah.
with the concerts, I haven't been to a concert since,
Yeah.
and so And that's really odd for me because I was going to concerts, different concerts about once a month.
Okay.
And any opportunity I would get, because where I'm at now, I'm about 2 hours from Nashville and about 2 hours from Atlanta
Okay.
and about two and a half from Birmingham. So really close
Yeah.
to where some good venues go. Or I mean where some good artists go. And so you know, when having the opportunity, one of my friends was like, would you rather be sitting close in a concert or would you rather do a meet and greet? And of course, it always depends
Yeah.
on the artist, but I like to do the meet and greets if possible. And I have
Yeah.
met some amazing artists, but a lot of the time you get to either go in when they do their sound checks
Yeah.
or, that sort of thing. And I would have to say I met Gavin DeGraw a few years back
Yeah.
and absolutely loved that because I grew up playing the piano
Okay.
and loving that bluesy soulful sound and hearing his songwriting as well as the piano playing. I just absolutely fell in love with him. And so
Mhm.
got to do, and I think I've seen him about 5 or 6 times, but I only got to meet him once and just so kind and nice. And it was one of those situations where we were kind of hurried through, but got to have, a short, probably 5 or 6 word conversation, but
Sure.
but just very kind to all the fans and stuff. And so any opportunity I get that I'm able to do a meet and greet with the artist, I usually take that over if I had to choose
Sure.
between sitting up close or doing the meet and greet.
Who else have you been able to meet?
Oh man. I got to meet Dorothy. And she played a small venue, which, she's, chick rock.
Hmm.
But she was super, super nice. I got to meet Dorothy, I got to meet Gavin DeGraw, the Bellamy brothers. Probably one of the nicest ones that I had probably a fairly long conversation with was Rory Feek from
Okay.
Joey and Rory.
Sure.
And it was not long after his wife had passed.
Mm.
And he came and it was probably one of the first shows he played after. And the book had just come out. And so he was really kind of doing a talk on his book and then he performed about 4 songs. And so we got to have our picture taken, get our book signed, and had a pretty decent conversation with him. And he was probably the nicest and kindest of all of the artists that I've been able to meet.
Hmm. Did who have you not seen in concert that you're hoping to see?
Mm, not seen in concert. I would have to say, because gosh, I've gone to a lot of concerts. Um, hmm. I've not seen like I said, I'm trying to think of who I've not seen. I've not seen John Mellencamp, but I don't know if he still tours now, but I've always wanted to see him.
He has a new album out that Bruce actually sang on 2 or 3 songs. So
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
yeah,
Well, I know he's one that I kind of think of when I think of,
yeah,
Bruce Springsteen because I mean their style with, their songs. I mean, I'm sure he was probably inspired by Bruce Springsteen with
yeah,
just kind of that working class hopeful but middle America rather than,
yeah.
New Jersey. So I always kind of tend to think of the two interchangeable. And he's one that I've always wanted to see that I've not seen.
Okay, very nice. Um, any other stories about live shows?
Oh goodness. Gosh, I'm trying to think. like I said, I've literally for probably about 20 years, I would go to a concert about every month.
Yeah.
I just, it's one of those things where, for a while I would, take off when I would go to the show.
Hmm.
But then I got to the point where I was going so often, and if it was on a work night, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go. So I have a lot of memories of going to the concerts and getting back at about 4 in the morning, sleeping for about an hour, and then
Yeah.
going in and working. Um, I
That's
got to see
funny.
Def Leppard on my birthday, and that was
Nice.
really cool. Yeah, they just happened to actually be touring on my birthday. And that's probably one of my second favorite concerts because, I went and they were, Tesla was opening for them as well as Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. And so it kind of felt like it was a special birthday.
Yeah,
Um,
that sounds like it.
yeah.
Miranda, how about in the other gig with the paranormal world, or maybe in your history, any
Mhm.
brushes with greatness or celebrities in those experiences?
No, but I would have to say, I mean, I've met some of the different paranormal celebrities, but for me, being able to go to these locations and stay inside of that history,
Yeah,
I've gone to some of the most haunted places around the country, Waverly Hills, the Lizzie Borden house. To be able to take the Lizzie Borden house, for instance, she's her true crime and stuff is very, very well known, but to be in that location and to be able, to touch the doorknobs, to touch the handrails and stuff that these folks touched,
hmm,
to me that's something that's very special.
yeah,
My parents, they, like I said, we would go on these trips and stuff every year, and one of the places that they would take us were usually like presidential homes or
yeah,
just some of the different old historical homes. And so as a kid, hearing the docents or the tour guides talk about the different stories within these locations and talk about the hauntings, and to be able to go back today and like actually spend the night or go to the places that maybe the general public doesn't necessarily get to go. To me, that's something that's really special and exciting to be inside and immersed in that history, having that tactile experience.
yeah. Do um what are there songs or albums that you go to on a routine basis to either help you, to stay motivated, to help you, you know, to give you inspiration, if you find comfort?
It really changes.
Okay.
Yeah, it really changes depending on what's going on because, one of the things that I use music for so much. I use
Yeah.
music in my episodes, to set the mood.
Yeah.
I use music whenever I'm going to these locations because, my thought is I don't like to go in one with a preconceived notion, and I don't like to go in feeling anything other than grounded and
Okay.
calm. And so the motorcycle helps with that, but it really just
Hmm.
depends on the location.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, when I'm going to some of these places, if I have my videographer traveling with me, or if I'm traveling with a girlfriend, usually what I'll do is I'll look at the location that we're going to, and I'll pick songs and kind of create a mixtape.
Yeah.
We were going to New Orleans, for instance, and we were traveling through, Tennessee,
Hmm.
Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana to get there. And so I sat down ahead of time and I started picking music that were related to those states, related to what we
Hmm.
were doing, and really just trying to kind of tell a story. And so
Right.
every time I travel, I always make a mixtape for the person who's traveling with me. One, so that they can have like a memento of the trip, but
Yeah.
then also to just, kind of really set the mood for what we're trying to do. And so I really kind of try to base my choices on that. And It's just amazing how much music can affect that.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, is there anything I should have asked you that I haven't?
Hmm. I think you pretty well covered it.
I
Yeah, I think so. For for with my show,
mhm,
I tend to, you've got the stories that a lot of people have heard about,
right.
like the Lizzie Bordens and those
Yeah,
sort of things. For my show, I tend to cover a lot of the locations that are a little bit more lesser known.
right,
And so that way, it does help to promote the travel, promote the tourism, and to share the story about the
right.
particular place. And so that's how I really try to set that with the show. Um but as far as anything else, I think you pretty well covered it.
Okay, very nice. I asked that because I love telling this story. Early in the podcast, I was talking to a guy, and at the end of the episode, we kind of ran through everything, and I said, "Oh, I finished recording. I turned off the recorder, and I said, "Oh, thank you for being on me." And he said, "Oh, well, no problem. Next time, I'll tell you about when I got drunk with the E Street Band."
Oh
Like,
my
what?
gosh.
What? And I was so shocked. I didn't think to hit record, like, okay, tell this. So anyway,
Oh.
um,
Well,
yes,
unfortunately, I've not got to see Bruce Springsteen in concert.
yeah,
I would love to see him. He's one of those that
yeah,
I really didn't gain as much of an appreciation for him until I really started following Bon Jovi, really.
yeah,
And I know that Bon Jovi is heavily influenced from
yeah,
Bruce Springsteen. And I'm finding, that's how I ended up finding and listening to him. And then I started to find that there were a lot of other artists. I mean, he is such an influential
yeah,
musician. So many people are influenced by him. It's
yeah,
it's amazing. And it always, kind of comes back to his music when you start listening to, some of the even the more current bands.
yeah. And he is a great storyteller. His
Hmm.
latest album, "Letter to You," is very much about grief and endings and yet beginnings. He tells the story that he was in a band in high school called the Castiles, and the last remaining member of the band passed away, and Bruce realized that he was the only one left. He was the last man standing, and which got
Wow.
him thinking about it. And so he has um, the album is "Letter to You." I recommend checking it out. There's a lot of songs about. There is a song called "Ghosts," and then "I'll
Mhm.
See You in My Dreams." It's very much about that this how our past is with us, and that our death is not the end, and I'll see you in my dreams is one of the lines in that
Wow.
song. So I really would love for you to check it out, and then let me know, like, hey, Jesse, I want to be
I
back on the
will.
podcast to talk about this.
Yes, I
Uh,
definitely will.
all right. All right. I'm going to have you plug everything in a minute, but I end every episode with the Mary question. And so
Mhm.
if you are a regular listener of Miranda's show, thank you so much for listening to me. She did you guys so proud. She is amazing. Um, but the Mary question is Jay Armstrong, who is an honors English teacher, has a new book out called Bedtime Stories for the Living. And he is recently retired. Um, but when he was teaching, he would spend 2 days breaking apart the song Thunder Road. He would look at the lyrics. He would share with his students the themes of the song. They would discuss, the metaphors Bruce used, and then at the end of 2 days, he would ask the question, "Does Mary get in the car?" So Miranda, that is your question. Does Mary get in the car at the end of Thunder Road?
That was a tough question. And I feel like she does,
Okay.
but I feel like there was reservation
Yeah.
that you know, there was reservation of it, but that she did do it because for several reasons. Because, you know, I mean, he's Bruce Springsteen, so
Yes.
yeah, you know, of
Uh-huh.
course. Um, but I don't know. It just kind of seemed, I don't know, maybe it was the time frame or whatever, but it just kind of seemed like just some of the responses or some of the things he said kind of just, about,
Yeah.
she's not too pretty.
Yeah. No, it's true.
um, and it just kind of seemed like, I don't know. I just kind of felt like with her, there was maybe some reservation about it, but then she does. Um, but when I went back to listen to it, because I never really thought a whole lot about it until I really got to listen to it. I guess in my mind, I just kind of thought she did, because
Yeah.
you know, because that whole album is just really just kind of a story, it seems.
Yes, it is.
Um,
Yes.
but I tend to think she did. But once I really kind of started going back and listen to it, I kind of felt like there was some reservation there.
That is an excellent answer, which is why, thank you. That's why um, I had never thought about that till Jay asked me the question. And I was like, what? No, what do you mean? And so it kind of makes for a fun way to end the podcast. So,
Mhm.
Miranda, if someone wants to reach you and get more information, what's the best way?
So the best way to reach me is under the Ghostbiker Explorations Facebook page or the Ghostbiker Explorations YouTube channel. You can catch up on all the past 5 seasons, as well as to see other events that are coming up, as well as different lives that I have on there, and also the Ghostbiker Explorations website, which is www.ghostbikerexplorations.com. If you want to come and check out the historic Scott County Jail and do one of our true crime tours or go on a guided ghost hunt with myself and my business partner, Dr. Christy Sumner, you can do that by checking out the historic Scott County Jail Facebook page or website at www.historicscottcojail.com.
Very nice. I appreciate it. Miranda, this was so much fun. Thank you for staying up late and visiting with me. I had a blast, and I try to go, if Bruce isn't touring, I try to go to Dragon Con every Labor Day.
Yes.
And so I will have to take a veer on my way to Atlanta and stop by and check out the tour and the site, and we can break bread together.
I
So
would absolutely love that.
thank you. All right, listeners, you go find your passion. Go ride your ride, visit your sites, do what you need to do. Go get vaccinated, go get boosted, and let's all be kind to each other because that's the only way we're going to get through this. Thank you, Miranda. Thank you, listeners. We'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.
I want and need your feedback. You can reach me multiple ways to tell me what you like or don't like about the show. You can reach out to give me guest suggestions or maybe to join me on the podcast yourself. We're on Twitter at SetListingBruce or at Jesse Jackson DFW. I have an Instagram, SetListingBruce or Jesse Jackson DFW. Our Facebook page, facebook.com/setlustingbruce. Go to patreon.com/setlustingbruce to find out how you can support the show, and we have several tiers of support. Please go to your favorite podcast player and hit subscribe. And tell a friend about the podcast because that is the way we're going to grow. If you're not tired of hearing me speak, you can hear me on Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast, where Charles Skaggs and I talk all things Doctor Who. The How Many podcast, where me and my friends Gary, Scott, Bob, and Jr. talk pop culture. And finally, my newest podcast, The Last Best Hope for Conversation, a Babylon 5 podcast, where Karen, Lou, and I are going through the TV show Babylon 5 one episode at a time. I am always looking for guests, so please reach out to me, setlustingbruce@gmail.com.
You just heard the fun talking, hard rocking, music loving, album ranking, fan thinking, joy spreading, lyric reading, story sharing podcast that is the one, the only Set Listing Bruce. The theme for Set Listing Bruce was written by David Rosen, used by permission.